Introducing National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk programming that you can access 24/7. For the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk for America.
And we're back. Welcome to Glove Fist. My name is Frank Lotierzo, part-time writer, full-time observer, joined by co-host Jack Hirsch, former six-term president of the Boxing Writers Association of America. Jack, as always, you look like you got some color. You got that big smile on your face. And before we get into boxing, let me just say I put my cards on the table and already bet on my favorite team, the Philadelphia Eagles, to go back and win the Super Bowl.
Well, I know, Frank, you had a banner year with the Eagles winning the Super Bowl.
At Ohio State.
Ohio State becoming national champions. I mean, listen, I know you're rooting for both teams to repeat, and they very well might.
Now, Jack, I'm rooting for both teams to get beat, but I don't think they're going to. I tried to jinx them, but it was fun collecting the money.
Will Howard, the Ohio State quarterback, he's gone to the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, you're keeping that Pennsylvania theme going, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh.
Yeah. I didn't watch a lot of the draft. Did you?
I watched a lot of it, Frank, but we have so much boxing talk, Frank. I don't want to talk about your betting slip. You don't talk about your fight. You don't talk about your betting in boxing, Frank.
I don't bet that much, Jack, in boxing.
There's one or two reasons why you don't bet on boxing, or maybe you do and you've been losing and you don't want to be exposed, okay? You don't want to be exposed as a poor handicapper, perhaps. So you don't want to
Jack,
talk about your betting on that, or you think you can get in trouble, with the network.
I don't bet. I usually don't bet on boxing because I have a little bit of an interest in that, and I care about that more than football. In football, I bet with one criteria. I want to jinx teams I don't like, and it cushions the pain if they end up winning. And you know what, Jack? Last year it worked out. Other years it hasn't. But I don't really bet that much on boxing because, Jack, there's not that many big fights to bet on. Like, what's the fight of the year going to be? Canelo and Crawford? I'm not going to bet that
we
fight.
may have had our fight of the year with Chris Eubank Jr. and Nigel Benn, Conor Benn, Nigel's son. Great fight last Saturday. Joe Bergman is jumping the gun a little by saying Eubank Jr. is going to the Hall of Fame. No, he's not. Possibly, but he's got to win a belt at some point. He's got to kind of make.
I think he was being truculent there, Jack. I don't think he was serious.
Well, no. Chris Eubank Sr., isn't in the Hall of Fame, and Nigel Benn isn't in the Hall of Fame. But they've both been on the ballot year after year. And there are people who do feel they belong in the Hall of Fame. And listen, if we're going to do comparisons, Vinny Paz is going in this year. And I'm not tackling the issue and saying Vinny Paz isn't deserving, or I'm not going there with that. But if you compare Chris Eubank and Nigel Benn to Vinny Paz, and you're asking me who's more worthy amongst the three, Paz would be in third place there.
Right.
If we put all three, and I'm not saying he would necessarily be a far distant third place, but I think any objective observer would see it as an American bias in the voting. Okay, and
But Jack, they say you can't go. You can't evaluate like that because this guy's in, this guy should be in. They say you can't do that, but it's only natural to do that.
but I want to talk about the fight last Saturday. Now, I saw it on delay tape on YouTube. I saw all 12 rounds the same day of the fight, but I didn't see it live. And you and I on the same page, Frank. When you don't see something live, you don't have much enthusiasm to score it because you know
Right.
what happened.
Right. I didn't see it live either.
Right. So I saw delay tape. I watched it, but I didn't score it. And just watching it loosely, no complaints about the decision, but that's watching it loosely. And it wasn't really a controversial decision. All three judges had it 116, 112. A lot of people felt it was closer. It was a type of fight where you had people who felt it could have been called a draw. But no one outside of Eddie Hearn, Conor Benn's promoter, is hinting that Conor Benn was hard done by the decision. To most people, yeah, Eubank had an edge. He deserved to get his hand raised at the end. But the impressive thing, Frank, both guys laid it out on the line. But I want to give a
But I expected that.
But I want to give a little caution for people who feel, oh, both guys made their own legacy. This fight is going to be remembered along with their fathers. I don't think it will. We remember it now. We admire the guys, and I'm going to give you a case in point, something that's close to you, Frank. Ali Frazier, the women. I saw them fight at ringside at the Turning Stone Casino, upstate New York. It was an 8-round slam bang fight. And you want to know something, Frank? For pure action, every second of the way, the girls, they, went at it even with more intensity than their dads. They were punching every second of the fight, it seemed. Their fathers were sensational, don't get me wrong. I don't mean, but no one remembers hardly Ali Frazier, the women. Are they going to?
I never saw the fight.
Right. What a great fight, Frank. What a great fight, for the 8 rounds, the way they went at it. And it was close. Layla Ali won a majority decision. But you tell me with Ben and Eubank, what did you take out of it?
Before the fight, Jack, I felt all along, I just felt that Eubank was a little too big and would just have a little more in the clinches and during the exchanges. And again, I didn't score it live. I watched it after the fact, and I think Eubank won. And I think a lot of it was the size was a factor. Although he did fade for a minute. Then he got his second wind, and I just think that ended up being the difference. Just a little bit, just a little bit there quicker with a little bit more. That's all.
Who was at more of a disadvantage? After the fight, Eddie Hearn was whining. Normally, I enjoy listening to Eddie Hearn because he talks very objectively. He tries to tweak things in favor of the guy he promotes, which is understandable. I would do the same thing. But he was whining about Conor Benn, saying, oh, after all he's been through. Well, Conor Ben, Eddie brought it on himself.
Right.
With these substance abuse issues. He brought it on himself. Okay, that's why he was suspended a while. And it took him a while to get back. And then Eddie Hearn said, well, he moved up 2 weight divisions. What a handicap. Wait a second. Eubank moved down in weight. Who had it worse? That's the question. I don't want to.
That's a tough call, Jack.
I know, but it's debatable. Who would you rather be? The smaller guy fighting a bigger guy, or the bigger guy weight draining himself? I'd rather be the smaller guy, to be quite honest. At least I
think so too.
Entering the ring, so I don't want to hear Eddie Hearn whining. Now he says Conor Benn is the biggest name in all of British boxing after this fight. He's emerged as a superstar. Eddie, you're delusional.
What's he going to say?
But he's talking. Eddie Hearn after the fight was sounding like a delusional fool with this.
And he sounded like that, Jack, more often lately, I think. He's gone a little too far. He doesn't go down the middle anymore. It's like he just always, and it's his job to make the case of his guy, but sometimes he goes too far and he embarrasses himself. But Jack, I don't think either guy is a major player at their weight. And I think that's why I didn't go out of my way to see it live. I was told what happened. I had a friend of mine tell me exactly what it was. His name is Joe Bergman. He called me up and told me what happened. I said, I'll catch you tomorrow on YouTube. I did, and I agree with what he said. He had it 116, 112, or 84. And again, I didn't score it, but I scored it as if I was watching a motion picture, all in one, and I felt that Eubank won.
Yeah, but no, but now what do they do? His Excellency got in the ring after. He wants to see them fight again. Why would you want to do that if you're Chris Eubank? You beat Conor Benn. I don't want to hear excuses. I don't want to hear
nothing to gain.
It's going to be better next time. I don't want to hear 6 months, a year from now how much Conor Benn's improved. He beat Eubank now. Eubank has zero obligation to fight Conor Benn. Supposedly they have something written in the rematch, but it's like it might be an optional thing. If it's an why have a 2-fight deal on something? I don't get it. And if
I saw today, Canelo's actually saying he's going to consider fighting Eubank.
Exactly. And if I'm Eubank, that's the fight I want against Canelo. Not that I think Eubank is going to beat Canelo, but that's the big fight. He's kind of earned it. He's had a long enough career where he's kind of earned a fight like that. Look, Eubank has come up short in other fights. Early in his career, his first loss, he lost barely on points to Billy Joe Sanders. Billy Joe Sanders was acting obnoxious beforehand, calling Eubank names, this and that, because Billy Joe Sanders is irrelevant right now in the boxing world. Completely.
Although he tried to make himself irrelevant the other night. Irrelevant.
Exactly. By insulting a name, and people in the media, like myself, are kind of falling for it. Like myself, I'm giving him a little bit of an audience by mentioning his name. So he wins in that sense, and criticize me for even mentioning his name. But the point I was trying to make, Eubank lost to Billy Joe Sanders earlier. He lost another close decision to George Groves. And he got stopped by Liam Smith, but in the rematch, he completely dominated Smith. So he kind of cleared that up. But he's had a long enough career, and where he's kind of earned this fight with Canelo more so than some of the other guys Canelo has fought.
Jack, the only problem is Canelo has to win Saturday night. Then he has to beat Crawford. And I'm sure there's going to be a rematch clause in that fight. And if he does, what if he doesn't beat Crawford, then that fight is out the window.
Yeah, too many things could happen in the meantime. Look, if Eubank wants to fight Ben again because it's great money, that's the best reason to take the fight.
And that's what, and they're prize fighters.
Right. The only reason for Eubank to fight Ben again is because it's the most lucrative fight by far. If that's the case, by all means, take it. Take the money. Okay? But if that's not the case, I mean, don't fight Ben again. I mean, I know it was a great fight. What happens if Ben wins the rematch, a close decision? Then we're going to have a rubber match with both guys. And
I don't think Eubank will do that, Jack, unless maybe if Canelo gets beat by Crawford, he might. But I don't think. I think he's going to wait.
This was a true grudge match. You saw the two of them in the ring after. Neither guy congratulated the other. I mean, neither guy.
No. The rivalry is deep. I mean, did you see the Eubanks wrote a book on how to beat the Benz?
Oh no, I didn't know.
Or it was a gimmick, but they had this book. One of the pictures they took, and it said on the desk, "How to beat the Benz."
Well, I'm going to tell you, this is the third fight between the Benz and the Eubanks. Chris Eubank stopped Nigel Benn in the first fight. Nigel Benn, to most people, won the second fight. Was called
got a draw.
The referee deducted 1 point from Benn in that fight. and if he didn't, then Ben would have gotten the decision.
So they're 1-1.
So yeah, well, you could argue that the Eubanks are barely up 2-1. Officially, they're 2-0-1, but they're barely ahead. In the 3-fight series. If you want to look
In
at
the
it
ring, it's 1-1-1.
Where's the true? No, wait. What are you talking about, Frank? Christine,
I'm sorry. Right. No, it's 2-1. You're right. You're right.
You could say
It's officially
2-1.
2-0-1, but it should be 2-1.
2-1. Yeah. You can argue that case.
My bad. I got the draw.
Listen,
The draw confused me.
Kudos to Eubank and Ben. They showed an Ali Frazier mentality, the way they went at it. They went at it. They pushed themselves to the brink, both guys. I mean, both guys wanted to win in the worst way. Compliments to both guys. And compliments also to Conor Ben. He didn't whine and complain much after the fight.
No, he showed class.
But I'm not so certain he's going to continue to show that class. He might take the Eddie Hearn route going forward. We might hear some complaints about this and that, I think I won the fight, but I didn't want to say it after, blah, 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 blah.
I could see that. And try to sell the match and make it bigger. I could see that. All right, Jack, you wanted to talk about former middleweight contender Joey Archer, who passed. Did you know him?
No, I never met Joey Archer. I'm friendly with his nephew, Kevin Archer. And there's never been a bigger Joey Archer fanatic, never a bigger fanatic for any fighter than Kevin was for his uncle Joey Archer. Joey Archer was one of the all-time great boxing contenders. When I say contenders, he was never a belt holder, because during the time he fought, and he retired in 1967 after losing a close decision to Emil Griffith, he had a 45-4 record. In his 4 losses, he didn't get stopped. I wonder what he's mostly going to be remembered for. Now, he
beat some good names, Jack.
Oh, he beat Dick Tiger. He beat Hurricane
He
Carter.
beat Carter. He beat Holly Mims. He beat Don Fulmer, Denny Moyer. He has some good wins on his record.
Oh,
I mean, Kevin likes to say Hall of Famer. I don't know about that, but
if
I guess there's a conversation for it.
But if you look at some of the fighters, the belt holders who've gotten into the Hall, and then you compare him to Joey Archer is, superior to them.
Yes.
I mean, I got it,
and he beat guys like Holly Mims and Reuben Carter and Moyer when it meant something. He didn't beat them when they were washed up.
Yeah, exactly. And the 2 fights with Emil Griffith, close decisions, very close decision. I mean,
both in Griffith's backyard.
Right. The first one I never saw in its entirety, really. I watched it as if it was live the night when it was on a 24-hour tape delay. That's the way they used to do things in New York, from the old Madison Square Garden when I was a kid. And it looked like he was a little ahead in the 11th round, but I'll be honest, Frank, I was a kid. I fell asleep the last few rounds. It was on tape delay. And I tried to go to YouTube to watch the first fight over. And all we see is the second fight, which I think Griffith won 8-6-1 even, in rounds. That's how I scored, that one. But the UPI, the AP, they were split. There was a lot of people split over who they thought won the fight. Archer could have easily been given one of the decisions, and if he was, he'd be looked at as a different way. He would have been a popular world middleweight.
He'd be a champ, yeah. All the belts and everything was on the line in both fights.
But the funny thing is, the interesting thing is, after beating what was left of Sugar Ray Robinson on November 10th, 1965, Robinson's last fight, okay? He lost his last 3 fights. He loses a split decision to Fulmer, a majority decision to Griffith with the title on the line, and then a very close decision to Griffith with the middleweight title on the line. And now that I think of it, Frank, he got 2 shots at the title. He lost to Fulmer, yet he fought for the title after that. That was kind of cool. That's how respected the fighters were back in the day.
That's right. A loss didn't kill you.
Yeah, big deal. So you lost the fight. The best is fighting the best. So you lost. We move on. Okay? That was the mentality. Now it's devastating. You lose one
Now,
fight,
that's why the fighters don't fight.
Like you're Devin Haney, you lose one fight, you non-stop excuses, you're taking your opponent to court, you're going into hiding, you're feeling like you're so entitled. I mean, then,
Jack, it's so much more a business today. It really is. And that started probably with Ali, and then taken a little further with Ray Leonard and De La Hoya, and then Mayweather just totally blew it out. And now they all follow that template. Stay undefeated, get the big fight, and go from there.
Mayweather was the one, I guess you're correct, who emphasized being unbeaten. Marciano didn't do it when he fought, but I don't think it's Mayweather. I think it's the public. For those people who sing the virtues of Marciano, and they're going to say, oh, he's better than Liston. Marciano was unbeaten. No one beat The Rock. I mean.
But, Jack, I think Mayweather trained the fans over the course, say, from the De La Hoya fight on, that you're only worth time if you're undefeated. And that was Mayweather's calling card, and he knew, as long as I'm undefeated, they can call me, they can say I'm afraid of this guy and that guy, but as long as I'm undefeated, I can yell who has beat me, and people will want to come to see me fight. And that's the way the fighters look at it today. And Jack, to a degree, I almost concede their point, because how many fighters do we talk about who, toward the last quarter of their life, the last third of their life, don't really live a good life and struggle, and nobody comes to save them, when they're in need, once they're off the set. So Mayweather, I think, understood that, and he grasped that, and I think that, he made it work for him.
Well, with Mayweather, don't be so short. Those exhibitions, you get hit in the exhibitions, and you've got to spar and get ready for the exhibitions. You're not just showing up. The Mayweather went on a bit of an exhibition tour, and but you're right,
Jack. He's never going to fight again officially.
No, because he doesn't want to risk a loss.
Right, but if he lost, it still wouldn't mean nothing. He's 48 years old.
It does mean something. You lose the one fight. I mean, I'll give you an example of a guy who's regarded as a great fighter, not an all-time great, but a modern great. I think you got on the tip of your tongue.
Jim Jeffries?
No, Aaron Pryor.
Okay.
Aaron Pryor had one nonsensical fight that he lost to Bobby Joe Young, okay? If he didn't have that fight at the end of his career, when he was all done, all washed up, he would be unbeaten.
Do you look at Aaron Pryor any differently, Jack, because of that fight? I don't. I forget that fight.
I think there's always a perception. I mean, you like it or not. I mean, it's there. It can't be.
I think when younger guys look at, when they hear us old guys talking about Aaron Pryor and how great he was, and then they look his record up and they say, "Oh well, he got beat." So I think with fans like that, I could see it might dull the shine a little bit. But to boxing guys who we respect, no one considers that when they think of him.
You're talking about the hardcore, like you and I, Frank. That's not
right.
what I'm talking about. We're in the minority. Okay, the majority are the fanboys who go back and forth, on stuff, and and they get the most petty arguments, and they just don't get it.
Jack, the other day, it was after the Lakers and the T-Wolves game, and somebody put a post up about LeBron and whatnot, and I just commented and I said, LeBron didn't score a point in the fourth quarter. There's no way that Bird, Jordan, Elijah Wan, Kobe, or I named somebody else, I forget. I said, there's no way those guys go pointless in the fourth quarter. 340 people gave it a like or a laugh within an hour and a half. So just amazing how those debates are. And like that fuels things. And like the young guys today, because they didn't see Jordan or Leonard, they think that Mayweather and LeBron are the GOAT.
Yeah, well, I don't want to get too deeply into it, but there are different ways of looking at the greatest of all time. It could be peak value, or it could be longevity, it could be body of work. I mean, there are different factors involved, and it really is different eras. We hear about it and we look at it as being a bit of like an excuse, but but there are different eras, and it's a different mindset. Different things are expected of someone. Like I was talking to someone about the former NBA players. When LeBron made the comment, Giannis would score 250 points if he was playing, in the 60s or whatever. And I'm thinking to myself, but wait a second. You're saying the Bob Cousy's couldn't have competed, the other guys then, with the modern guys of today. But Muhammad Ali was a fighter of the 60s. You're telling me he couldn't compete with today's guys?
The difference is, though, Jack, I think when Ali fought, they had same-day weigh-ins, 15-round championship fights. It was a little bit different. They weren't catered to as much as they are today. Today, we have load management. And, in all fairness, the NBA today is either a three-point shot or a dunk or a layup. There's no mid-range game.
The game is much different. But I tell people, today's fighters, if they fought in the past era, they'd be fighting more. That Harry Greb was 45
would not fight 47 times in 1 year.
If he were around today and he was the number one middleweight in the world, Harry Greb would be fighting maybe 3 times a year. Okay, that would be it. Okay, maybe twice a year. I mean, that would be.
Yeah, they had to fight for money.
And Mayweather, if he had to, would have fought more. In a case in point, the evidence will be this. Look at how often the modern fighters, for the most part, have fought as amateurs. I mean, these guys who pick and choose their spots like Mayweather. Mayweather, I don't know how many amateur fights he had. Whatever you see on BoxRec, you multiply it, because there's so many smoker shows, okay, that aren't going to be on the record. But Mayweather probably had over 100 amateur fights.
But today, Jack, the American amateurs, because there's less tournaments and there's less activity in the amateur ranks in this country, they even have less of those today.
Yeah. And but there's a big Times Square show on Friday, okay? And then Canelo fights Saturday, and Naoya Inoue, the great Japanese fighter, he fights the day after that. But the Times Square show, I mean, there are 3 fights. There's Teofimo Lopez and Arnold Barboza. There's Devin Haney and Jose Ramirez. And then there's Ryan Garcia and Rally Romero. Of those 6 names, the biggest name on the show, I'd have to say, is Ryan Garcia, coming back after his suspension. And Garcia's been given the easiest fight, the easiest assignment, okay? At least I can make a case for Ramirez upsetting Haney. And
that's the only fight where there could be an upset.
You could make. I wouldn't. I look for Teofimo to win in style against Barboza, but Barboza's a very good, solid fighter.
But that's a big card, Jack, in New York with a lot of eyes. Teofimo is going to bring his A game.
Now, Bill T, we don't talk about the WWE tonight, except if we're talking about old-time fighters, in the WWE, if that ever came up. I enjoyed that thing. Did you ever see it, Frank, with Stone Cold Steve Austin and Mike Tyson?
I
Did you
saw. I saw. Well, they were in the middle of the ring yelling at each other.
Oh, that was great. That was great. The way that was staged. It was like such a funny thing.
The
Yeah.
Vice Channel does do a good. They do documentaries on the wrestlers, and some of them are pretty good.
Oh, I just got a message. Our producer, our head of this network, Mac, he's hanging in there. He's doing the best he can. We all think about Mac. We all, miss Mac. And I enjoyed the times
Absolutely.
when Mac put you in your place, Frank. By,
Excuse me.
I enjoyed the times Mac put you in your place. Okay.
Well, you got to find somebody to do it.
Yeah, he came to my aid on that. But it's a best to Mac. Everyone's thinking of him. Everyone loves Mac.
Prayers out, Mac.
Yeah. And okay, but the Times Square show. So I look for Garcia to stop Romero in, let's call it, 6 rounds. But he's been off a year. Let me ask you this: if Garcia wins on points, even if he wins by a very big margin, you're going to be disappointed.
Yes.
So
It's got a guy that only has one hand that's going to come right to him. He should look good against Romero.
I don't want him to win a lackluster decision, and I'm scared that might happen because he's been off the year. Who knows what's going on? Devin Haney, Jose Ramirez.
Jack, that's the only fight where there can be an upset because they're the most evenly matched in my book. And I'm not going to pick the upset, but I think if Ramirez won, I would not be surprised.
I think Haney wins big on points, big, okay? Because Haney
probably
too talented, but again, you wonder what this has done to Haney emotionally. The Garcia fight, he could say all he wants. A guy's been on steroids. He could say a guy cheated making the weight. But in his mind, he took a bit of a beating, but it was actually a close fight. Haney, I gained a lot of respect for Haney in the Garcia fight because he kept plugging away. He bit down. He never stopped trying, and he actually made it a close fight in a way.
I'll give him that, Jack. But the other side of the coin is Ramirez has seen him beat up now. And he's gone into the fight thinking that maybe I am facing a guy who's a little unsure of himself, maybe a little damaged psychologically. I'm going to jump on him and I'm going to reinforce whatever doubt he has. And Romero is an attacker, pressure fighter. That might be the type guy that will bring out the best in him. Either he'll rise to the occasion, which I expect him to, or he might succumb to the pressure.
It's funny sometimes to compare fighters to teams. And if we have to talk about the NBA, maybe Haney compared to the LA Clippers. There's a certain glitz. Maybe he gets it done. But Ramirez, I would compare to one of these teams. They make the playoffs, but they're going out in the first round. They're number 8 seed playing a number 1 seed.
So he's the Steelers.
I think his window, Ramirez, may have closed. At least just halfway close. He was once a really good prospect. And you're very dismissive of Arnold Barboza's chances. Is it because you're not high on Barboza, or because you're very high on Teofimo? And
I think Teofimo, Jack, is the goods. And I think when his head's on right and he's in great shape and he's fighting with a purpose, I think he's an elite guy. And I think this sets up well for him because he probably isn't happy that he's not the main event. So I believe inside he's not only fighting Barboza, but he's fighting Garcia, and he wants to steal the show.
Yeah, and I've had the opportunity to spend private, personal time with Teofimo. He's really a good guy, not what he's portrayed. Okay. And his dad's a good guy as well. They're not what they're portrayed. So all this junk talk, but I gotta believe Teofimo, this is showtime for him. He's gotta produce the goods. It's one thing to have off nights against guys like Jermaine Ortiz and Sander Martin, who are basically running around the ring the whole time. You could call it boxing too, but let's be honest, they did everything they could to avoid Teofimo. Barboza's going to come forward. He's going to come forward.
And that again works to Teofimo's advantage.
Right. He's going to be hittable there.
Not a guy he has to look for.
And if both guys, I guess if Haney and Garcia win and they both look impressive, they'll rematch them again. But I think a much more fun fight is Garcia and Teofimo, and it's a pretty unpredictable fight if it did take place.
In the normal boxing world, that would probably be the next fight because both guys are high profile. They both have a style that's fan friendly. And, there'd be a lot on the line. That would be a big fight. And that would be one that would definitely get my interest to talk about. But, Jack, I'm just so used to these guys not fighting. I just don't think it's going to happen.
Oh, no, well, certain fights have to be made. Fighters try to avoid one another.
They try to marinate it.
When they have somewhere else to go. The only reason Mayweather and Pacquiao fought after 5 years, they had nowhere to go. Mayweather had nowhere to go. There were no other options out there, none at all. Okay.
I agree with that, Jack, but there is a caveat I add. You're totally right. They had nowhere to go, and it also happened to work out that at that time, Mayweather was absolutely certain he could beat Pacquiao. I think he had a little reservation a few years before that. But after Marquez stopped him, then I think Mayweather said, okay, I'm all right.
We don't know what Mayweather was thinking. You can't get inside.
I'm going to go by his record, Jack, and when he fights guys, and he always fights them when they're on their downswing.
He did. Oscar De La Hoya was on the downside. Shane Mosley.
So was Mosley.
Past his peak. Zab Judah was past his peak. Okay.
And he got Canelo before he peaked. And he made him come in at 152.
I don't criticize him for the Canelo fight because Canelo was an emerging star. Okay,
Jack, he hadn't fought pay-per-view one time.
You want to know something, Frank? If the logic you're using, taking credit away from Mayweather, would be the same thing that if Terence Crawford wasn't fighting Canelo and he signed to fight Boots Ennis, he beat Boots decisively, you would say years from now, Crawford knew he wanted to catch Boots.
Jack, Boots is much further along in his career than Canelo was at that time. And Mayweather made him come in late.
Wait, Canelo had something like 44 fights. Didn't Canelo look it up?
Jack,
Canelo,
but we know his first 25 fights were against nobodies. He was only 15 years old. Or 16, whatever it was when he turned pro.
He had beaten Austin Trout, Arizona Lara, fighters like that.
A lot of people thought Lara beat him.
Okay, regardless, but the point is Canelo was well established. Canelo did improve after. He hit a point where he did improve. I got to admit
We'll disagree. I think it was brilliant, again, on Mayweather's part, getting Canelo before he got big and strong and filled out, and he made him come in at 152. You ever see the picture of the weigh-in of those two guys? Canelo looks like a skeleton. But how could he turn the fight down? The biggest name in sports and the most money. He couldn't turn it down, and he probably thought he could beat him, which they all go into that thinking. They don't think things rationally. They all think, well, I can win.
Very few fighters, don't duck anyone at all over their career. Lennox Lewis didn't seem to be the type to avoid anyone at all at any point. I can't think of an instance. There's usually one instance. I don't think Roberto Duran ever avoided anyone in any way.
He did to me. He didn't give Buchanan a rematch. And today he says Buchanan's the best guy ever fought.
You're correct. You want to know something? You're correct there. But 5 months after, he got beat by De Jesus. And he obviously had to fight De Jesus next. You're right. Not having a Buchanan rematch. I remember Buchanan's dad telling me that's always going to be a stain on Duran's record. You want to know something? Just the idea that you're bringing it up, there's the stain on Duran's record.
And Jack, I just saw where Duran said that Buchanan, I don't believe him, but he said Buchanan gave him his toughest fight.
He said that also before he fought Leonard altogether. Yeah, he did mean it. Buchanan really did give him a terrific fight. I was at that fight. People
And there's
forget.
no way Buchanan could have had any idea how good Duran was going into that fight because nobody did. We knew he was good, but nobody knew that he's potentially the greatest lightweight ever.
Think of the Duran of the first Leonard fight. That was the Duran that Buchanan got, the same exact Duran, and he survived them. And Buchanan took a terrific punch. Duran would, for the first 6 rounds, Duran threw everything at him, hit him terrific shots. Buchanan had great legs, great movement, great boxing ability.
But Duran's pressure was just it was unrelenting. He was unrelenting. I mean, Buchanan had to be thinking to himself, where did this guy come from?
But Buchanan always tried to win. He wasn't just trying to survive. All he could do was survive the early rounds, because the Fury, no one could have held at lightweight that version of Duran. If it was Mayweather would have been on the defensive for a few rounds, hardly punching, just trying to.
Joe Bergman just touched the nerve, Jack. He's totally right. Thomas Hearns never ducked anyone, and I have said for years, of the supposed four kings, it comes down to Duran and Hearns as far as who had the most guts and who was the most willing to take risk. And they were the type guys, it didn't matter who it was, anytime, anywhere, any place. Those guys both were exemplary when it came to that. And Hearns was the most exciting of those four guys.
Yeah, and you know what I like about Hearns' attitude too? I got to speak to him while he was still active, late in his career after the second Leonard fight. And he told me he wanted to fight Leonard again. And I said, yeah, but Leonard thinks you beat him. There's your vindication right there. Even Leonard is going on record saying he thinks you deserved a decision in the second fight. And he said, that's really nice, Ray. I appreciate it. But it really doesn't matter because at the end of the day, when you look at my record, it's a draw.
He did say that?
He said, it doesn't matter what Ray thinks, even though he said, I appreciate it, that it's nice of him. I didn't beat him, he said, because it was called a draw. He says, opinions don't matter, like he was saying to me. It's what the result is. And he kind of wanted a third fight to clear it up officially. I mean, that's
Tommy Hearns had he was guts personified. I mean, remember, Jack, he lobbied to fight Michael Spinks at one time.
Wow, I don't remember. I don't quite
when he was the junior after he lost to Hagler. It wasn't, there was never an offer, but he had talked about that in the papers that he wanted to fight Michael Spinks to try to make amends for the Hagler fight.
You want to know something? Wait a second. No, that realistically was never going to happen. I'm going to tell you why. Because he fought Hagler in 1985. What was it? April 1985. And that's when
Spinks moved up the fight. But Jack, remember though.
Spinks beat Holmes for the title that year.
Later in September. But remember, in 85, in April of 85, after Hagler beat Hearns, Spinks offered to fight Hagler at a catchweight, and Hagler said no. And Hearns is the one that jumped in through the media and said, "Well, I'll fight Spinks at that weight or for the heavyweight title." But Spinks then turned his mind or his interest towards Holmes after he couldn't get Hagler because he knew he had nothing to gain by fighting Hearns, who lost to Hagler. What's he gain there?
Yeah, Spinks he's another one. He never ducked anyone. He didn't duck a fight with Hearns. I mean, it made no sense.
He went for the bigger fish. I mean, how could anybody say he ducked Hearns when he fought Holmes?
And I'm not going to say that Hagler ducked Spinks. He didn't want to fight him. But then again, Hagler wanted to stay in his division. He had no obligation to move out of his division and move up.
You're right, Jack. But if we're going to break you're right. But if I'm going to break ties, as far as when it's really close, the guy that took the more chances, I'm going to go with, because Hagler made everybody come up to him. He didn't go up in weight. Leonard didn't have to go up. He could have made Hagler come down. He didn't go up. Hearns could have said, look, I'm not going up to middleweight. I'm a super middleweight or a junior middleweight. So if I have to break ties, I'm going to do that. But let me ask you to break a tie. But before we do that, I haven't seen Skull fight, but Canelo's going to win that fight.
I haven't seen Skull fight, but you never know, because I said about 3 years ago that Canelo was declining. So if Canelo now loses, I already have my red flag with Canelo. I do. And I don't know enough.
Is it because he hasn't knocked anybody out in 7 fights or 6 fights, whatever it is?
He fought Edgar Berlanga, who's very mediocre. Berlanga is, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and say Berlanga's a little better than average.
And Jack, maybe he had a good night. Maybe he stepped up and just had a good night.
Listen, Berlanga on his best night shouldn't be going the distance with Canelo unless Canelo has slept. He's just, Canelo's in a totally different league. It's like, we were talking sports before, like the USFL, playing an NFL team, okay? And only losing to an NFL team by 13 points, let's say.
But Jack, maybe Canelo just had a little bit of an off night too. These guys cannot get up every night for every fight. And it was probably hard for Canelo to get up for Berlanga. And he's probably hard to get up for Skull, but he will be up for Crawford.
Canelo strikes me as an old school fighter in that he always stays in shape, that he always trains. He does that.
I think you're right there.
Fighter
but the mental part, I'm not sure.
Mental part might be a little hard. Well, Canelo picks and chooses. Only guys he thinks he could beat. Now you mentioned, he's interested in Eubank. He sees that as a very winnable fight. I'm not certain, Frank.
Canelo's career mirrors Mayweather's an awful lot.
I'm not certain, okay, that he fights Crawford in September. That somehow he might try to finagle and move Crawford back and want to fight Eubank in September.
I don't think he gets out of that fight, Jack. Crawford's banking his whole career on that fight. I don't think Crawford's going to let him go on that.
Oh, speaking of fighters moving around making deals, Shakur Stevenson, I don't know whether you saw, he's being represented by Lou DiBella now.
I saw that.
Top rank, and he's not happy with Turkey, His Excellency. He's claiming supposedly not all promises were kept, this or that. Nice with DiBella. I'll tell you this. I don't know what's going on with Turkey. I'm not with His Excellency, so I'm not commenting on that. But that's quite a dip down from being represented by the company Top Rank to going to DiBella. DiBella's not going to do better for him than
maybe he just thinks he'll have DiBella's undivided attention, and he'll move him better. But
the Top Rank had offered Stevenson reportedly a 5-fight deal over 2 years, $3 million a fight, a total of $15 million. But these entitled fighters think they're superstars. Oh, that's not enough money for me.
That's exactly what it is.
And now he's getting less than that, unless he could somehow get a mega fight. Oh, he's also fighting William Cepeda. Okay, they're fighting in June on a Golden Boy show. And how much is he going to get paid for that fight? You kind of wonder. About the same $3 million he was offered with Top Rank. That would be my guess.
It's a great sport, Jack. Who said it? It's a great sport, terrible business.
Yeah, in a way, it's fighting too. The Japanese fighter. He's making his
and my buddy Jim Curtis guy's fighting on the undercard. I don't know if the fight's going to be aired. I think he said it's going to be. All right, Jack. Let me ask you something. I've been going at it with a group of guys that one side we think Holmes Larry Holmes, all-time great, possibly top 5, great career. The other guys think he was a cherry picker. He avoided Coetzee, he avoided Dokes, and he avoided Page, and he avoided Pinklin Thomas. Now, my argument to that is, well, he beat the guys that beat them, and if those guys would have won fights, like people say, well, Frazier never fought Lyle or Shavers. Well, because Quarry knocked them both off before he could get to Frazier. So my side is, I don't want to hear that Holmes didn't unify the title. He was clearly the best heavyweight of the 80s and the most dominant. I mean, is anybody really going to think Coetzee is going to beat him, or Greg Page, who lost to Trevor Berbick, who Holmes beat right before he beat Page? And he did beat Witherspoon. It was a tough fight, close fight. He did beat him. I don't want to hear that Pinklin Thomas is going to beat him or a threat to him.
No, you're thinking revisionist history now. I agree with you in this sense. I don't want to hear this nonsense about unifying titles. You have to know who the champion is, in the division, if it's clear cut. Holmes was the heavyweight champion. Michael Dokes, Jerry Coetzee were belt holders, the same way Daniel Dubois is a belt holder today. You have to be a total idiot if you're going to look at me with a straight face, and not you, Frank, someone else, and say Daniel Dubois is the world heavyweight champion. I mean, it's ridiculous.
And Jack, remember,
Larry
Weaver is the reason why that WBA belt was passed along. Because remember, Holmes beat Weaver, and then Weaver fights Tate for the WBA title, makes a couple defenses, loses it, and then it goes down the line. He loses it to Dokes, and then they all passed it along.
Frank, he did duck Pinklin Thomas, and at that time, he ducked Pinklin Thomas because Pinklin Thomas was considered a big threat to Holmes, and Holmes was unbeaten. He clearly ducked the fight with Pinklin Thomas, no ifs or buts about it. I remember the time. He didn't duck it. Mike Dokes was promoted by Don King along with Holmes, and King never showed an inclination to make the fight. Holmes would have beaten Michael Dokes, so
he would have beaten Pinklin Thomas too.
At that stage, he might not have. Okay,
we're talking 84 when he went with the IBF.
Yeah, but what happened? Thomas eventually had a substance abuse problem. Then Pinklin Thomas, who beat Tim Witherspoon, may have beaten that Larry Holmes. It would have been a toss-up fight. Okay, Holmes.
I like Pinklin. I trained with him. I could never pick him to beat Holmes before 85.
Yeah, but you trained with him when he was a bit of a novice, I think. I don't think he was in Frazier's gym when he hit his peak. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
No, he wasn't. You're right, Jack. This was 81, 82. He hadn't quite peaked yet. Right. You're right.
Right.
Very nice guy. Funny guy. Good guy.
Holmes absolutely ducked Pinklin Thomas at that stage because Holmes had the Mayweather attitude. He was unbeaten. He's going after this Marciano record. I mean, I love the way we make up these records. I mean,
I must have been asleep, Jack. I don't remember Holmes talking about Marciano until he got to Spinks. I really don't.
No, it was coming up before. It was kind of building up. He looked good to fight. He beat Carl Williams.
That was 48.
Unexpected.
Right, May of 85.
Before that, he beat David Bay. He actually looked good at that point. But Thomas was a genuine threat who he could avoid, and he avoided him. I mean, listen, Holmes was obviously, history tells us, a greater fighter than Pinklin Thomas. And the best of Larry Holmes against the best of Pinklin Thomas in their primes, I'd go with Larry Holmes, as most people would. But at that stage, Holmes, he had the close call with Witherspoon. Okay? He was declining.
And Witherspoon was never that great again either. It's a shame.
And Pinklin looked a little better against Witherspoon than Holmes did. That's where Pinklin won his, WBA title from. And then Pinklin stopped Mike Weaver. So he was kind of looking good at that point, but then He had the
It's
drug
4 years
problem,
after Holmes beat him, but yes.
yeah. But
All right, Jack,
you know,
I'll see that. And Joe said the same thing. He said he did talk about Marciano. I don't remember that until the Spinks fight came along.
no, he did talk about it before as he was getting closer. Yeah.
Jack, tomorrow is 8 years since Anthony Joshua fought Vladimir Klitschko.
Man.
Can you believe that? And the reason why I bring it up is because, first of all, those 8 years flew by. Second of all, Jack, I remember watching that fight that afternoon, and I saw Joshua get up from a knockdown and come back and win the fight on a night that Klitschko never fought harder. And I remember thinking, I never saw Mike Tyson get up and win a fight. I never saw Lennox Lewis get off the deck and win a fight. This guy's done something that neither one of those ever did. And I thought to myself at the time, Jack, there's a chance, and one worth noting, that Anthony Joshua might be the next Lennox Lewis. And boy, did I miss that.
I mean, the question is, has Joshua had a career that would merit him being inducted into the Hall of Fame? He scored some nice wins before losing.
He fought more of the good guys than anybody else. Jack,
I mean, he beat Joseph Parker. He beat Povetkin, guys like that. I don't know. Listen, Anthony Joshua's more an attraction now. It was a great fight, him against Klitschko, but he never quite.
But my point is, Jack, that I based on that fight, I didn't know that the knockdown that Klitschko scored on him was going to have the residual that it did. And looking back now, I mean, I was clearly wrong, but at that time, I thought Joshua was clearly the best heavyweight in the world, and if he fought Deontay Wilder, he would have put him in the 5th row in 2018.
Yeah, the Joshua situation, I was going to say Joshua never ducked anyone. He didn't have to fight Usyk, and he didn't have to have the rematch, and he took it. But the bottom line is he did duck Wilder, and I know that was Eddie Hearn's doing. But regardless, if you're the fighter, you can insist on a fight.
But they don't, Jack, because they trust their managers. Same thing with Lennox Lewis and Bo. Bo wanted to fight Lewis. Rock Newman said no.
No. Lewis wanted to fight Bo in the worst way, and he would have.
Lewis did, but Bo wanted to fight too. But Rock Newman said no. We're the bigger name. We're going to dictate the terms and make him wait. Bo wanted to fight him after he beat Holyfield.
We have only a couple of minutes left, Frank. But the question is, are you willing to fight the guy, or you want to fight him bad enough? The fighter calls the shots. If he wants to fight bad enough and he insists on it, the fight's going to get made.
How many guys do that, Jack? How many guys not named Mayweather or Canelo do that?
But fine. But I don't want to hear, some guys duck other guys. But, fights are makeable. They'll take less money if they have to or whatever. But
Jack, a lot of.
But Frank, we've got limited time. So just quick predictions. I'm going to go with Ryan Garcia in. Oh boy, he's been off a year. I get the feeling he's not going to look that good.
All three of the favorites are going to win.
I'm going to go with Garcia. Believe it or not, first fight back. Nah, I can't see it going the distance. 8th round stoppage. Okay.
All right, I'm going to say Garcia wins by stoppage.
Haney wins widely on points, and I'm going to like also Teofimo to stop Barboza.
And I would agree with that.
10th round stoppage. But okay, Frank, it's been a lot of fun, and see you next week. We're going to have a lot to talk about.
We'll have a lot to talk about next week, Jack. That's for sure. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Prayers for Mac. Hope to see you soon, Mac.
You're watching National Streaming Sports. Over 20 podcasts, 70 shows, and a 3.5-star rating on Roku TV.